I did not leave my husband because I stopped loving him. I left because love became a knife in my hands, and I did not know whether to hold it or let it cut me open. That night, rain pressed against the windows of our home like the sky itself had come to witness my humiliation. 6 months after I wore his ring. 6 months after Peter promised me forever with trembling hands and eyes full of boyish hope. 6 months after he told me he wanted a house full of children, laughter in every hallway, and me in the middle of it all like the sun. I found him in our bed with another woman. Sarah. Her hair was scattered across my pillow. My pillow. The one Peter used to pull closer when he missed me at night. She scrambled for her clothes while I stood at the doorway, unable to breathe, unable to scream, unable to understand how a love that survived childhood, distance, jealousy, and time could die in one evening. Peter kept saying my name. Jane, please. Let me explain. But pain is loud when trust breaks. Louder than truth. Louder than love. So I walked out. I turned off my phone. And 6 days later, when I finally returned home with his child growing inside me, my mother did not welcome me with anger. She welcomed me with tears. Peter was dead. And the truth I refused to hear had followed him into the grave. I first met Peter when I was 8 years old, standing beside my mother's faded blue suitcase in a town that smelled of dust, mango leaves, and new beginnings. My father had just gotten a transfer, and my parents believed a new neighborhood would give us a quieter life. I believed nothing. I only knew I had left behind my friends, my school, and the little tree I used to climb whenever the world felt too big. Then Peter appeared at the fence. He was the kind of boy who looked too sure of himself. Clean shirt, sharp eyes, chin raised like the whole street belonged to him. He watched me drag my doll from the car and said, "That doll is ugly." I hated him immediately. I told him his face was uglier. That was how our story began. Not with flowers. Not with sweet words. But with 2 stubborn children standing on opposite sides of a fence, both pretending they were not curious about each other. Peter was rude, proud, and impossible. He stole my skipping rope once just to make me chase him. I poured sand into his school shoes the next morning. He laughed. I cried. Then he bought me a big candy from the store and said, "Don't tell anyone I'm sorry." That was Peter. He never knew how to say soft things properly, but somehow, his actions always found their way to my heart. And slowly, the boy I thought I hated became the person I looked for first whenever I stepped outside. By the time we became teenagers, Peter was no longer just the annoying boy next door. He was my secret keeper, my defender, my loudest headache, and the first person who made silence feel safe. We walked to school together under the same umbrella when it rained. He always held it more over my head than his, then complained loudly that I was too short to hold it myself. I would roll my eyes and pretend not to notice how his shoulder got wet because of me. He knew everything. He knew I hated mathematics but loved literature. He knew I cried whenever my father traveled for too long. He knew I loved painting clouds because they never stayed in one shape, just like feelings. And I knew him too. I knew he acted arrogant because he was afraid people would see how soft he really was. I knew he kept old birthday cards in a biscuit tin under his bed. I knew he wanted a big family someday because he said empty houses made people lonely. We were children turning into something we did not yet know how to name. Sometimes, when he laughed, I would feel something quiet move inside me. Something warm. Something dangerous. But we never spoke about it. We hid behind friendship because friendship was safer than wanting more. Then my father fell sick. It happened quickly. 1 month, he was laughing at the dining table. The next, his voice became thin, his body weaker, and our house filled with the smell of hospital drugs and unanswered prayers. When he died, Peter held my hand at the funeral. But grief does not only bury the dead. Sometimes, it moves the living away too. After my father's death, my mother changed. Her laughter disappeared first. Then her appetite. Then her desire to remain in a town where every street carried my father's memory like a wound. She said we needed to leave. A new city. A new school. A new life where people would not look at her with pity every Sunday after church. I did not want to go. Peter did not want me to go either, But he tried to act strong. He stood by our gate on the morning we packed our things, hands buried inside his pockets, his face hard in that old stubborn way. But his eyes betrayed him. They were red. "You'll write?" he asked. "Every week," I promised. "You'll call?" "Every chance I get." "You won't forget me?" That question broke something in me. I wanted to tell him forgetting him would be like forgetting my own name. I wanted to tell him he was stitched into my childhood so deeply that even distance would not know how to remove him. But I was young, grieving, and scared of saying things that sounded too much like love. So I only smiled through my tears and said, "You're too annoying to forget." He laughed, but it died quickly. The car moved before I was ready. I watched Peter grow smaller through the back window until the road swallowed him completely. 4 months, we tried. Letters came. Calls happened. Then life became busy. School changed me. Grief changed me. Time, cruel and quiet, placed its hands between us. Eventually, Peter became a memory I kept folded inside my heart. Not gone. Just untouched. Years later, I graduated in New York. I should have been thinking about my degree, my mother's tears, and the future waiting for me beyond the ceremony hall. Instead, I kept feeling like something unfinished was standing close by, breathing near my past. Then I saw him. Peter. He stood across the crowded hall in a dark suit, older, taller, sharper, but still carrying that same proud tilt of his chin. For a moment, the world lost sound. The applause faded. The cameras blurred. Even my mother's voice became distant. He had come for his sister's graduation. But his eyes found me like they had been searching for years. "Jane," he said. My name sounded different in his voice now. Deeper. Softer. Like a door opening in a house I thought had burned down. I laughed first because crying would have been too honest. He smiled, and suddenly I was 8 again, standing by a fence, pretending to hate the boy who would one day become the map of my heart. We talked for hours after the ceremony. About the years we lost. About his life, family, about my mother. About the letters that stopped coming because addresses changed, phones broke, and no one was brave enough to search harder. But beneath every word was something neither of us said. The love had not died. It had only waited. And when Peter touched my hand that evening, gently, like asking permission from time itself, I knew my heart had remembered him before I did. There was only one problem. Derrick Herman. He was my boyfriend then, though calling what we had love would be too generous. Derrick loved control and called it protection. He loved jealousy and called it passion. He loved standing too close when I tried to breathe and asking questions that felt like accusations wearing perfume. At first, I convinced myself he was only insecure. But after Peter returned to my life, Derrick's insecurity grew teeth. He hated Peter immediately. Not because Peter insulted him. Not because Peter fought him. Peter barely needed to speak. His presence alone unsettled Derrick because Peter represented something Derrick could never force out of me: history, trust, and a version of myself I had forgotten how to be. Derrick started showing up uninvited. He called when I was with Peter. He questioned my clothes. He mocked my childhood stories. He told me Peter was only pretending to be good because men like him always wanted what belonged to someone else. But I did not belong to Derrick. That truth took me too long to say. Peter never pressured me. That was what made me love him more. He waited quietly. He told me I deserved peace, even if that peace did not include him. And for the first time, I saw the difference between love that holds your hand and love that tightens around your throat. One evening, Derrick grabbed my wrist during an argument. Peter saw the mark the next day. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He only looked at me with sadness in his eyes and asked, "Jane, when did love start hurting you?" That question saved me. Breaking up with Derrick was not loud at first. It was quiet. Terrifying but necessary. I met him in a restaurant with bright lights and cold air, my hands trembling beneath the table. He smiled like he already knew I was afraid, and maybe that was what finally gave me courage. I was tired of men who fed on my fear. "I can't do this anymore," I said. His smile disappeared. He called me ungrateful. He called Peter a thief. He said I would regret choosing a childhood fantasy over a man who had been there when I needed stability. But Derrick was never stability. He was a locked room. When I stood to leave, he leaned closer and whispered, "You'll come back when he breaks you." I should have heard the warning inside those words. But I was too busy walking toward freedom. Peter never celebrated Derrick's pain. He only held me that night while I cried, not because I missed Derrick, but because leaving something toxic still hurts when it once wore the mask of love. Peter kissed my forehead and said, "You never have to earn gentleness from me." Months later, he proposed under a sky full of pale stars. No crowd. No drama. Just Peter, nervous and smiling, holding a ring like it was the most fragile promise in the world. "I lost you once," he said. "I don't want to spend another life pretending I survived it." I said yes before he finished. And when I married him, I believed the story had finally forgiven us. I did not know the worst chapter was waiting after the wedding. Our marriage was sweet in the beginning. Not perfect but real. Peter left notes on the fridge when he had early meetings. I painted in the small room he called it Future Gallery. On Saturdays, we cooked together badly and laughed like children when the food burned. At night, he would pull me close and talk about the children he wanted. 3, he said once. 2, I argued. 5, he teased. Peter. He laughed and placed his hand on my stomach, even though there was nothing there yet. One day, this house will be noisy. I pretended to be annoyed, but secretly, I wanted it too. I wanted little versions of us running through hallways. I wanted to watch Peter become the father I knew he would be, playful, protective, proud, too emotional at school events and pretending not to cry. He had already planned their rooms in his head. He wanted a garden. A swing. A wall filled with family pictures. Looking back, that is what hurts most. He was not planning to leave me. He was planning forever. Then Sarah entered. She was an old friend Peter reconnected with through work. I did not suspect her. Peter introduced her casually, and she smiled at me with a sweetness that did not reach her eyes. I remember thinking nothing of it. Trust made me careless. Love made me blind. One afternoon, while I was at work, Sarah visited our home. She brought drinks. She brought laughter. She brought Derrick's revenge in a bottle. And by evening, my marriage looked like betrayal. I came home earlier than expected that night. The house was too quiet. Not peaceful quiet but guilty quiet. I walked down the hallway and saw Peter's shirt on the floor. My heart slowed before it broke. Then I pushed open our bedroom door and found the scene that would haunt me longer than death itself. Peter was in bed. Sarah was beside him. For a few seconds, I became empty. Sarah jumped up, grabbing her clothes, avoiding my eyes. Peter looked confused, weak, terrified. He kept saying my name like it was the only truth left in the room. "Jane, please. I don't know what happened." I laughed then. A broken, ugly sound. Because how could a grown man not know how he ended up in bed with another woman? He reached for me, but I stepped back. His face twisted with panic. "Listen to me," he begged. "Something is wrong. I swear to you, something is wrong." But I could not hear him. All I could see was our bed. Our vows. Our future collapsing into one unbearable image. So I ran. I left the house with nothing but my handbag and the sound of Peter calling after me. I entered a taxi and turned off my phone before he could reach me. I disappeared to a farmhouse outside town where no one would think to search. For 6 days, I let my pain answer for me. For 6 days, Peter searched for a wife who had already judged him guilty. And on the 6th evening, Derrick found him first. Peter was tired when Derrick attacked him. The police later told me he had spent days going to my mother's house, calling my friends, checking places I once mentioned in passing. He barely slept. He barely ate. He was living inside fear, trying to find me before my silence became permanent. That evening, as he returned from work, Derrick followed him. Not as a wounded ex-boyfriend. As a man who had planned everything. He cornered Peter near a quiet road where the streetlights flickered like dying candles. Peter recognized him immediately. Derrick smiled, And I imagine that smile now like a curse. You still don't understand, do you? Derrick told him. I told Jane you would break her. Peter tried to walk away, but Derrick pulled out a gun. Then he confessed. Sarah had worked with him. She had drugged Peter. She had staged the scene. Derrick wanted me to suffer for leaving him, for choosing Peter, for proving that control was not love. But Peter's pain was not enough for him. My heartbreak was not enough. He wanted to leave me with a wound no apology could heal. Peter's last moments were stolen by a man who hated the love he could not destroy. Derrick shot him in the forehead. Just like that, the boy from the fence, the man from my graduation, the husband who wanted 5 children and a noisy house, fell onto the cold ground with my name still trapped somewhere in his life. And I was miles away, holding a pregnancy test. 2 lines. Peter's dream. Peter's child. Peter's last gift to a wife who had turned off her phone. When my mother called, her voice was shaking. Jane, come back from wherever you are. I knew before she said it. Some truths arrive before words. I rushed back home and she told me the saddest news ever. She asked why I had to off my phone for days and was out of reach. Now Peter was gone. I broke down in my mom's arms and cried. This was too unbearable to bear. At the morgue, Peter looked too still. Too quiet. Too far from the boy who used to steal my skipping rope and buy me puff-puff as an apology. I touched his cold hand and waited for him to wake up, to laugh, to tell me I was crying too much. But death does not explain itself. Later, Sarah was arrested. She confessed everything. The drugs. The setup. Derrick's plan. She cried and said she never meant for Peter to die. But regret is cheap when someone else pays with their life. Derrick was arrested too. He faced trial, and every testimony felt like reopening Peter's grave. Justice came, but it did not bring him back. It only proved what I should have allowed him to tell me, that my husband had not betrayed me. Peter was buried on a cloudy evening after a rainfall. 7 months later, I sat beside his grave with my stomach heavy beneath my black dress. The wind moved softly through the flowers, and for a moment, I could almost hear him teasing me. You're crying again, Jane? I placed my hand on my belly and broke in tears. I'm sorry, I whispered, my voice breaking beneath the weight of everything I had lost. I'm sorry I didn't trust you enough to listen. You were my best friend since childhood, Peter. I should have listened to you. I should have believed you. But I thought my husband had betrayed me. I thought you had stopped loving me. My lips trembled as fresh tears slipped down my face. But I was wrong, Peter. I was so wrong. And now, you're not here to forgive me. Then the baby kicked gently inside me. Through my tears, I smiled. Because Peter was gone, but love had left a heartbeat behind. He had always dreamed of a full house filled with children, laughter, and tiny footsteps running through the halls. But he never lived to see any of it. The worst part was that he never even got the chance to know I was pregnant with our first child. And now, I was left alone with his baby. 6 years later, it still felt like yesterday. The pain never truly left. It only became quieter, hiding behind my smiles and the life I forced myself to continue living. I survived because of my son. He was his father's carbon copy, Peter's perfect little replica. Same eyes. Same smile. Same quiet gentleness that made my heart ache every time I looked at him. So I named him Peter. My little boy. I had to be strong for him. I had to wake up every morning and be both mother and father, even when my heart was tired. But I never imagined I would raise our child alone. I never imagined Peter would not be beside me, holding our son's tiny hand, teaching him how to walk, how to laugh, how to become the kind of man his father had been. One quiet evening, I took little Peter to his father's grave. He held my hand tightly as we walked through the cemetery, carrying a bouquet of beautiful flowers. When we reached the grave, he gently placed them down, his small fingers brushing against the cold stone that carried his father's name. I stared at it for a long moment, my chest heavy with love and sorrow. Then I sighed softly. Keep resting, Peter, I whispered. Your son loves you so much. And I still do. I really do. Little Peter leaned against me, and I wrapped my arms around him, holding the only piece of his father that life had left behind. Some people leave this world before they see the dreams they planted, but love has a way of growing in their absence, in a child's smile, in a mother's strength, and in every heartbeat that still remembers their name.